District 78, I believe it was, in Vanderburgh County, which also part of her district was Vanderburgh and Warwick counties. And she was a state representative for 9 years. After that, she had great service from 2014 to 2017 as the state auditor. And then, of course, she has been the lieutenant governor for the past several years. And as Mitch Daniels said just a few years ago, it's time for Indiana to have a woman as governor. So those are all great credentials that she possesses. And she's also hitting the issues which are affecting Indiana voters. If you have seen her recent commercials, you realize that among the issues that she is bringing forward is the mental health situation with regard to our young people. Some very sad statistics which she will bring to forefront. Also, she is protecting those who can't protect themselves. And those are the challenged individuals under the FSSA who rely on the Medicaid waiver to be able to have in-home services. Very, very important. And it was heart-wrenching to see some of the folks behind the lieutenant governor in the State House who had to worry about whether or not they would be able to provide care in their own homes for their children who were otherwise disabled or had a issue which required them to have the care that is needed. With that, and with me hopefully not usurping everything she's going to say, let's give a round of applause to our lieutenant governor.
And you know, one of the things that you didn't share, Steve, is I am a former county chair down in Vanderburgh County, and I want to thank you and your central committee, Lana, and everyone for your service, because I know you all are the ones that really make it happen. And I was a county chair down in Vanderburgh County when Democrats controlled everything. I don't know if you all remember the early 90s. I mean, the Democrats were in control of state and local government, much like we are today. And my hardest job was getting anyone to run. Because nobody wanted to run, they didn't think they could win. But you know what, we focused on hard work and conservative principles, and we were able to take control of the county commissioners for the first time in 25 years. We took control of the county council for the first time in 60 years. And then I went on to become the first Republican auditor in 44 years. And today, Vanderburgh County is all Republican. And so it just goes to show that if you work hard and you stay focused on your conservative principles, you can make a difference. Because people are conservative in Indiana. And people appreciate hard work. But one of the things that I'm most proud of is getting the support and the endorsement of over 150 local elected officials all over Indiana, including the Allen County Commissioners, Commissioners Peters, Commissioners Beck, and Commissioner Brown. And that means a lot to me because I've come from local government and I understand how important local government is to the entire state of Indiana. You know, I started out as a county auditor down in Vanderburgh County, and then I was a county commissioner and a state representative, auditor of state, now lieutenant governor. And throughout my many years of public service, I've been focused on giving a voice to people that can't afford the high-paid lobbyists that roam the halls of the State House. Being able to make sure that government is transparent and accountable to the people that it serves. And so as lieutenant governor, today I have probably more duties and responsibilities than any other lieutenant governor in the country. Because in most states, the lieutenant governor acts if the governor is incapacitated, which is true in Indiana. But in addition to that, I also head up 4 agencies. I'm Secretary of Agriculture. And it's interesting, when I talk big business in Indiana, people don't automatically think about agriculture. But let me tell you, agriculture is big business in Indiana. It contributes over $36 billion to our state's economy. Since I've been Lieutenant Governor and serving as Secretary of Agriculture, Indiana has gone from the 10th largest to the 7th largest farming state. And what's so impressive about that is we're not a particularly big state. We're 38th in size geographically out of the 50 states, and yet we are the 7th most important agriculture state in the country. But I also head up the Office of Community and Rural Affairs, and we give grants to improve the quality of life throughout rural Indiana, $32 million of grants that we allocate every year to help improve the life and the quality for those Hoosiers that live in rural Indiana. I head up the Housing Community Development Authority, which supports and promotes affordable housing, and then the Indiana Destination Development Corporation, which encompasses tourism in Indiana. But two of the initiatives that I head up, that I'm extremely engaged in and an advocate for, is I head up the Intellectual and Developmental Disability Task Force. We have 100,000 Hoosiers who have Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, or autism. And so we work through that task force to ensure that they can live the lives they want to live and fulfill the dreams they dream. Because I always see our friends with disabilities are really just friends with different abilities. And they have the same hopes and dreams and desires as each and every one of us. They want to have a job, have friends, love and be loved, and be successful in life. And that's why, as the chair of the Intellectual and Developmental Disability Task Force, I spoke out against FSSA and the $1 billion error they made. First of all, how do you make a $1 billion error? I mean, if that was private sector, heads would roll, right? Yet we made a $1 billion error in an agency, and then to make up for that error, we wanted to cut the funding for parents who take care of their severely disabled children with complex medical needs. I'm not talking about children that run out and play during the day and come in and watch TV and you feed. I'm talking about children that have tracheotomies, that have feed tubes, that are on ventilators, that can't take care of themselves, and in most instances are nonverbal. And so to take these parents who are caring for their loved ones and saying, we aren't going to compensate you like we've been compensating you, where do they get the help then to take care of these children? So I'm proud of the General Assembly for taking some steps to address the issue, and we certainly need to do more. Because those Hoosiers don't have voices. And at the end of the day, we are all going to be judged by how we care for the most vulnerable among us. And then, of course, I co-founded the Indiana Mental Health Roundtable. I'm very passionate about Hoosiers that struggle with mental illness and addiction. You know, for me, it's very personal. My mother struggled with depression. My older brother, Larry, was an alcoholic and drank himself to death. My younger sister, Nancy, died in her early 20s by suicide. And then our daughter, Courtney, is 16 years sober and bipolar. So when you have lived with Hoosiers that have struggled through no fault of their own, you know, my daughter said she got all the bad genes in the family. And I said, you know, honey, it's not the hand you're dealt, it's how you play it that's important. So we've got to give people some good cards to play, right? That's why I'm so engaged in that issue, and that's why I'm proud of the General Assembly for putting in place the infrastructure and funding for the 988 suicide hotline. And we have a lot more work to do. But I'm running for governor because I care deeply about Indiana and about Hoosiers. And I want to be able to boldly lead Indiana into the future. Hoosiers want someone that'll be on their side and stand up for them and work to make sure they're paying less in taxes, working to protect us all from the drug cartels and their Chinese allies, and then someone who will be a voice for those vulnerable Hoosiers, those struggling with mental illness and addiction. You know, I'm not a self-funder. You know, I'm running against men that are, In fact, when one of my opponents put $5 million of his own money, and I asked my husband if he'd give me $5 million. Well, he asked me if I'd give him $5 million. So that didn't go anywhere. In fact, I told him, I said, you know, honey, if I'd known 46 years ago when we got married that I was going to run for governor one day, I might have held out for someone with more money. He said he would have too. But seriously, you know, I live in Indianapolis. I've been in Indianapolis for this is my 10th year, living in Indianapolis during the week and going home on the weekends. Now, don't feel sorry for my husband. He rather loves the arrangement. But, you know, I know what it's like to be ignored by the Indianapolis establishment, coming from Evansville, going home every weekend, staying connected to the rest of the state. Because people in central Indiana tend to think that is the state. And it is an extremely important part of the state. But so is Fort Wayne and Evansville and South Bend. You know, so are all the little small towns in Indiana like Madison and Winchester that I was visiting yesterday to view the tornado damage. It takes all of us to make Indiana the great state that it is. You know, I want to boldly lead Indiana into the future. And I'm not going to spend 4 years as governor sitting in an office playing it safe so I can get reelected. We're going to be bold and we're going to be transformative. And I have the passion, the commitment, the courage, and the experience to get results for Hoosiers. I don't need on-the-job training like my opponents. We're going to move Indiana forward by focusing on 4 building blocks. We're going to grow our economy and our infrastructure. We're going to invest in education and workforce training. We're going to strengthen our families and our communities. And then we're going to modernize state government. You know, when we talk about growing our economy, I've been doing that as lieutenant governor, leading the effort to expand broadband throughout Indiana, connecting 70,000 new Hoosier families and businesses, unlocking that economic opportunity. And as governor, I want to continue to grow our economy. And we'll start by eliminating the state income tax. We're going to axe the tax. You know, I travel the state. Hoosiers are struggling today with the high cost of living, inflation, and Bidenomics. We have a chance to put thousands of dollars into their pockets every year. Now, my opponents have joined the big spenders and the bureaucrats saying, oh, we can't do it, it's a gimmick. Well, what they're really saying is government needs more of your money and you need less. It's not going to be easy. It has to be phased in. But guess what? We're already doing that. A couple years ago, our rate was 3.4%. Today, it's 3.1%. In 2027, it's going to 2.9%. I'm just saying, let's make it a priority, and let's get there quicker. So how do we do that? That's what everybody says. Well, how do you do that? That's so much money. You can't possibly do that. My last year in the General Assembly was 2013. That year, we passed a 2-year, $30 billion budget for the state of Indiana. In 2023, 10 years later, we passed a $44.5 billion budget for the state of Indiana. We increased government spending by 50%. But from the 21 to the 23 budget session, we increased spending by 19%. So before we passed the 23 budget, we had a $6 billion surplus. So we took $2.9 billion and said that's going to be our surplus. The other $3.1 billion we put into government spending. Now, not all bad, because we paid down on pensions, we paid down on debt, we paid cash for capital projects. But I'm saying that if eliminating state income tax is a priority, we could have put some or all that money towards eliminating the state income tax, and we would get there a lot quicker. And so what happens when we do that? Well, the Federal Reserve in St. Louis says the average Hoosier makes $58,000 a year. That's $2,000 of your money we give back to you. And what are you going to do when we give you money? You're going to put it into the economy, right? Because 78% of your pre-tax income goes into the economy. So we give you your money back, you're going to put it in the economy, that's going to grow other revenues. But in addition to that, we can make Indiana a low-income tax state. The Tax Foundation in Washington, D.C. says that Indiana is 10th in the country for our overall tax environment. So we're not in bad shape. But 7 of the states ahead of us have no sales or income tax. So when we eliminate the state income tax, not only are we giving money to you, your hard-earned money, which, by the way, you know how to spend it better than the government does, but in addition to that, we can make Indiana a no-income tax state. So where are people moving today? They're moving to Tennessee, Texas, Florida, South Dakota, which are all no-income tax states. So we got to be bold to make a difference. But in addition to that, we have to improve our education and our workforce training. And so as governor, I want to totally revamp education. We're going to focus on the 4 R's: reading, writing, arithmetic, and reasoning. We're going to teach children how to think, not what to think. We're going to protect our most precious resource, our children, from indoctrination and manipulation. We're also going to work with the school administrators, with law enforcement, to keep our children safe in our schools. But I want to totally revamp education. Currently, we have early childhood education, which I'm a big proponent of. It is housed in the Family and Social Services Administration, FSSA, that's where it is. Then we have K through 12, which is a standalone agency. We have higher education, which is a standalone agency. We've got workforce training, which is housed in the Department of Workforce Development. And then we have Indiana Economic Development Corporation, which has economic development. I would pull out early childhood education, take K through 12 higher education, pull workforce training out from DWD, and take a little bit of economic development. Now we create one agency where everyone is on the same software system. Everyone is on the same page, working together for a seamless cradle-to-career education system, preparing every child for the next step in life upon graduation, whether it's enlistment, employment, enrollment, or apprenticeship. As Secretary of Agriculture, when I saw that our land, our valuable farmland, could be bought up by China and our adversaries, I joined the fight with the General Assembly to keep it from happening. And as Secretary of Agriculture, my Department of Agriculture is currently doing an assessment of all lost farmland from 2010 through 2022. And I said, hey, I want you to go one step further. Let's figure out the economic impact of that lost farmland, and then who has bought that farmland, and are they adversaries to the United States of America? It's okay for China to buy our crops. We just don't want them to buy our farmland. And when I saw that land near our military sites could be bought up by our adversaries, I stopped it. We had 3,900 acres of land that butts up to Crane Naval Warfare Center that now we are having bought up and we are having it put under DNR. Do you realize that is going to be one of the largest acquisitions of land in the state of Indiana? Not only will we protect our military site, but it's going to be a wildlife and recreational center for hunters and people to enjoy. 3,900 acres. You know, as the Lieutenant Governor, I have been fighting for those who have no voices in Indiana. And I will tell you this, I will continue to fight, and we'll make sure that the fentanyl dealers are treated as the murderers they are. You know, if ISIS came to this country and killed 100,000 Americans, what would our reaction be? Would it be pretty swift and decisive, wouldn't it be? I mean, we take action, right? But last year, almost 100,000 Americans died, including thousands of children. from fentanyl. And what did Biden do? He sues the Texas governor for trying to keep illegals out of his state. In the last 3 years, at least 6 million illegal immigrants have entered into this country, including drug cartels. Last year, in 2023 alone, we stopped almost 200 individuals on the terrorist watch list at the border. That's what we stopped. And so we have got to get tougher on crime because Indiana is a border state. Make no mistake about it. And so we will be sure that we treat those fentanyl dealers as the murderers they are. And so as we look forward and move towards mental illness and addiction and helping those that are struggling, we know that 3 out of 10 Hoosier students have considered suicide. And that is the future of Indiana. It affects each and every one of us in some capacity. Because at COVID, we have seen a 20% increase in anxiety and depression among all of us, but a 60% increase among young people. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among young people. So we have got to do more. It's why I co-founded the Indiana Mental Health Roundtable, and it's why, as governor, if we ever find ourselves in this situation again, there will be no mass mandates or lockdowns because of what it has done to all of us. And so I want to finally modernize state government. We already are on our third iteration of a plan to take our 100 state agencies and get them down to under 35. Realizing efficiencies and cost savings. You know, we're going to make government more transparent and accountable, and I will bring outside independent audits in of our major agencies so that we can be sure that our government is operating efficiently and cost effectively and serving the Hoosiers that are paying to have those services. Every dollar that comes to government has a name and a face attached to it. That money is your money. You know, our Republican Party has been the party of freedom since World War II. We've stood for free speech, for free markets, for empowering the individual. But when I look around this country, I'm not sure we're winning the battle in defense of freedom. Big government, corporate media, and far-left ideologues are a three-headed monster that are eroding our liberties and turning our country into a top-down authoritarian state. We have to be sure that we continue the battle in defense of freedom. And I'll tell you what, that battle ain't going to be won or lost in Washington, D.C. They can't get anything done, and they bicker constantly. The battle for the defense of freedom will be won state by state. And I'm running for governor to make sure that Indiana doesn't become a California, a New York, a Michigan, or an Illinois. I'm running for governor to protect our conservative values. I'll make sure parents control what's being taught to our children. We'll stand shoulder to shoulder with law enforcement, and we'll enforce our crime laws to the fullest. And we will send a message to the criminals and the fentanyl dealers that you might get into this country through our wide open southern borders. But when you come to Indiana, you will pay the price. We'll axe the tax. We'll live within our means. We're not going to saddle our children and grandchildren with a mountain of debt. As governor, I'll support our workers, our companies, so we can compete with other countries, including China, and win. Because the Indiana you and I will build will never cast aside our most vulnerable Hoosiers, the unborn, the elderly, the disabled, those struggling with mental illness and addiction, because they are our friends, our families, and our neighbors. The Indiana you and I will build together will never compromise in protecting faith, family, and freedom. So do we have challenges ahead? Of course we do. But we haven't come this far to have just come this far. And as governor, together, If we are bold and we stick to our conservative principles, our best days are ahead. I'm Suzanne Crouch, I'm running for governor. I ask for your vote on May 7th, and let's build a better Indiana together. Thank you and God bless you. And doing our part, but we also protect and monitor our boundaries to make sure that they don't get in here.
This is Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Crouch, as President of the Senate. You're the only president I've known in my 8 years of service, and I think experience does matter, which is why I'm running for Congress. But I want to acknowledge you and the great work you've done. You're a master with the gavel of keeping 50 rebel rousers in order and on point in the comments that you made today and supporting many of our initiatives in the Senate and in the legislature. So thanks for coming up today, and best of luck to you and the rest of the journey. And it's been an honor to serve beside you and with you.
Thank you. And it's been an honor to serve beside you and the senators in the General Assembly. You know, as a former state representative, it was, the legislative process is really interesting. And at the end of the day, you know, the hope and the prayer is that we are passing laws that, you know, actually serve and protect Hoosiers. But I will tell you this, when I was a state rep, and I would call my husband in the evenings, every evening I call him, and he would say to me, he said, "Are you in session today?" Because we weren't in session every single day. And if I said no, he said, "Oh good, the taxpayers are safe today." Anyway. Well, thank you. Yes.
You have a question, Lieutenant Governor. You mentioned about eliminating taxes, and sometimes what we hear is taxes help build our economy as far as, you know, building roads and infrastructure and things that we need. What would be the replacement income? Well, how do you see that growth and forward momentum still occur without that additional income?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And let me be perfectly clear. I'm talking about a tax cut. I'm not talking about a tax replacement. And so here's how we do that. So we passed in 2023 a $44.5 billion budget, okay? So what I would do, and of course, when I say what I would do would be work with the General Assembly, because they're the ones that have to pass the laws. But what I would do is I would take that $44.5 billion base, okay? I'm not talking about cutting it. I'm saying you take that $44.5 billion base, and then we let it grow at some rate. Maybe it's the rate of inflation, rate of, you know, cost of living. You know, there's some kind of factor that we put in place to make sure that it grows only so much. And any excess revenues and surpluses, then that's directed towards eliminating the income tax. But we also have to have triggers in place to protect against economic downturns. Because if we have a bad economy and we don't have the revenues that we felt like we should have, we don't want to cut services. So we don't want to ever get below that base. We just then wouldn't dedicate anything towards eliminating the state income tax. It's when we have those excess surpluses and revenues, that's when we do it. But then when I talk about modernizing state government, I am telling you, I know too much. From being an auditor of state, from being the vice chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, from being lieutenant governor. When we modernize state government and get our agencies down to 35, we're going to realize so much cost savings. I am telling you that we will. That's newfound money that we can dedicate to those services and to new programs. The problem is, unless you have a governor who understands how government works from the local level to the state level and how it can work better, we never go through that exercise of modernizing state government. Because government has no competition. So what's the motivation to do that? You know, and so I'm saying that to me, we have to do them in tandem. If we want to eliminate that state income tax, we also have to look at modernizing state government so that we can realize those millions, hundreds of millions of dollars of savings that then we can spend on other programs. Does that make sense? We were the first state in the country to pass a law requiring photo ID to vote. And I have, does that mean that it doesn't happen upon occasion? I'm not saying that, but I feel very confident in the security of our elections here in Indiana.